Good morning, lovelies. Today we are going to talk about some of the biggest mistakes that I see authors make that prevent them from getting published, or even from getting considered by literary agents. I have been offering professional manuscript critiques for a while now. Basically, people pay me to look at their manuscript and tell them all the mistakes that they make, plus some potential solutions and ways to fix them. On a related note, my website is linked in the description of this video. You should also stick around to the end of this video for some more details. In this line of work, I see a wide variety of mistakes, but after a while, I started to see some similar patterns popping up, especially among newbie writers who have never produced a manuscript before. And I know a good YouTube idea when I see one, so today I thought that I would talk about the 5 biggest mistakes that I have seen writers make that prevent them from getting published. Hopefully this will help you in your writing journey and help you prevent such mistakes. Also, a quick note before we begin, I am running a book giveaway for Pride Month, Dread Nation by Justina Ireland, and its sequel, Deathless Divide. It's basically queer black girls fighting zombies in 1880s America. Stick around to the end of the video to find out how you can win. Alright, big mistake number 1, no story structure. Story structure is the literal bones of the manuscript. Without it, there's no structure. It's literally just a floppy, incoherent mess. Some people seem to think that, they don't need story structure, that they're above it, or that it's even a bad thing because it's formulaic. It's not. It does not make the story formulaic, it makes it make sense. Usually this problem manifests as just not writing in Act 1. Let's return to our middle school days and talk about the 3-act story structure, shall we? Most modern stories, at least here in the West, are divided into 3 acts: a short Act 1, a long Act 2, and a short climactic Act 3. Act 1 introduces us to the main character and the world that they live in. It's called the ordinary world in the hero's journey. The inciting incident usually happens here, either in the middle or the end of this act. The characters will react to the incident and then cross the threshold over into Act 2. Act 2 will then begin there, obviously, and then it will end in some sort of darkest hour, at which point the heroes will then rally and then dive into Act 3, which is the climax of the story, usually the last quarter or 25%. So, to properly divide this, Act 1 is the first 25% of the novel, Act 2 is 25% to 75%, and then Act 3 is the last 25%. That's usually how that plays out. But a lot of writers get really impatient and they want to skip all of that ordinary world stuff and go straight into Act 2. The more fun parts of the story, where the characters have gone to Camp Half-Blood or entered Narnia or gone into space to save the princess. They seem to think that nothing exciting can happen in Act 1 and thus, they'll lose their readers without that, so they cut it completely, and that's wrong. Look, plenty of exciting things can happen in the opening act, okay? That's what it's for. It's to hook your readers. I just recently read The Bone Shard's Daughter, the first book, not the sequel, no spoilers. In the first act, Lynn, the Emperor's daughter, risks her abusive father's wrath by breaking into his room and stealing one of his keys in order to learn the secret forbidden magic that he doesn't want her to learn yet. She's doing this so she can become Empress. At the same time, Jovis, a smuggler, rescues a small child when their whole island just gets swallowed by the ocean for unknown but probably magical reasons. Shit happens. But even if your Act 1 isn't that exciting, you still need it. It helps us form an emotional connection with the characters that you want us to root for. It helps us find our footing in this brand new world that you've created, even if you are going to burn it down in Chapter 3. It makes the climax, Act 3, more tense and meaningful. Most Act 3 problems are actually Act 1 problems. We can't root for Luke in space if we don't see him on his farm first. We cannot appreciate how Percy flourishes as a demigod without seeing him struggle in the mortal world. We cannot understand Geralt's reluctance to adopt Ciri without seeing how terribly his world treats him and people like him and who are affiliated with him. Establish reality first, then tear it away. Otherwise, readers won't even get past Chapter 1. Problem number 2, all plot, no story. I covered what exactly the difference is between plot and story in my What's the Difference video, plot versus story, so I'll just give a little crash course here. I mean, plot is important, okay? It is what drives the story. It's the quest, the murder mystery, the trials and tribulations that the characters have to go through in order to accomplish their ultimate goal. But we don't just want to read about the characters doing that. We also want to watch them slow down, take a moment to breathe, and get to know them as people. Without these moments of story, the characters are just sock puppets chasing after the plot bunny, alright? We don't care about them and we don't care about their goals, alright? It's gonna make their climax seem very hollow and unappealing. And theme? Forget about it. Some writers will have this problem by having the characters' entire lives exist only for the plot, even the main character. Everything else is a vacuum. It literally doesn't feel like they would be real, living, breathing people without this plot. And yes, I know that is literally true. They wouldn't exist without this plot, this story, but like, we're trying to make it feel like they would exist outside of it. If that makes sense, does it? I once had this manuscript about a science fiction murder mystery, and by the end of it, I had no idea who the main character was as a person. I didn't really know her backstory, why she became a cop, what her dreams were for the future, or why she didn't have any. I mean, there was nothing. She wasn't a person. She was just dragged from one set piece to another with no time set aside to establish who she was as a person or even to get those emotional reactionary beats. At the very least, you need to give your characters time to emotionally react to the shit that you're putting them through. I mean, that's gonna at least make them appear human. Number 3, the opposite problem, unnecessary scenes. This is when writers go the other way, trying to include a ton of story that distracts from the plot or bogs it down. Yes, we need scenes that establish the characters' backstories and world building, but it should not grind the book to a screeching halt or involve a side quest that they go on and then is never mentioned again. We do not need 3 chapters of fluff to know that your main character likes dogs, alright? One little paragraph will do that. Good places to convey the necessary information about your characters or the world is right after really intense battle scenes or promotions or some other big event. The characters are resting, recovering, and your readers also kind of need to catch their breath too, so this is a really good time for the characters to be emotionally vulnerable with each other. Travel scenes are also a really good one. If they need to get from New York City to Orlando, Florida in the span of a single chapter, that is, what else are you going to do in the car? Alright? That is a really good opportunity to have them talk to each other and establish backstories and motivations. Or if you're doing some sort of urban fantasy or post-apocalyptic world, I mean, they're gonna see all these magical or ruined landmarks. Tell us about that. That's really cool. You want to weave the information into the greater story, and only the necessary information, not fluff. How can you tell whether your main character's 8th grade prom experience is necessary to the story? Remove it, alright? Copy it, paste it into a separate file if you want to. If you can then read through your entire manuscript without that bit of information and the story makes sense, then it's gone, alright? Don't put it back in. By the way, if you are getting value from this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you get notified whenever I update a new one. Thanks. Number 4, not understanding point of view. Point of view is basically who you decide to be the narrator of your story. First person point of view is when the narrator is using I and we, and they're usually the main character. I went to the store with my friends. I fought the Minotaur. Third person point of view is when the narrator is separate from those characters, an outsider looking in. Jane went to the store with her friends. Mary fought the Minotaur. The mistake I most commonly see is when people mix up third person limited with third person omniscient. Third person limited means that the narrator is limited to the thoughts, experiences, and emotions of one, read that, one character for the entirety of the section, chapter, or book. Mary fought the Minotaur, almost gagging at the stench of his matted fur. She held her breath as she took another swing with her sword. That's third person limited. Third person omniscient is when the narrator has no limits on who they have access to. I mean, they're basically God. They know everything. The writer can pick and choose whatever information they want to give the reader at any given time, whenever they want. Mary fought the Minotaur, almost gagging at the stench of its matted fur. The Minotaur noticed her discomfort and grinned, not having brushed its fur in years. We're able to switch back and forth between Mary and the Minotaur as much as we want within the span of a single paragraph, and that's not true with third person limited. Again, third person limited is limited to exactly one character for the space of an entire section at least. Preferably the whole chapter. You do not get anyone else's thoughts, emotions, or history unless it pops up in dialogue or it's something that the POV character already knows about them. Choose which type of POV you're going for and stick with it. Do not suddenly switch it up halfway through your chapter or you're really going to disorient readers. And annoy your critique partner. Okay? Okay. And number 5, telling, not showing. Almost every single person I know has heard of the phrase show, don't tell. We are taught in middle school English class what this is, and yet, like everything else we learned in middle school, we seem to forget it. When you tell a detail, you're stating it in the plain text. John was sad. Rebecca was a great fighter. The stormtroopers have impeccable aim. Showing a detail, on the other hand, is painting a picture. Sometimes over the course of a few sentences, sometimes over the course of an entire chapter. Showing, not telling would be describing the tears rolling down John's cheeks or how he's trying to muffle his sobs. Rebecca spends an entire chapter fighting the bad guys, showing what a badass she is. The stormtroopers actually hit their target for once. Note here that if you do tell a bit of information and then show something completely different, the readers are going to take it one of two ways. They're either going to completely forget what you told them and remember only what you showed them, or they're going to remember you as a hypocrite. Alright, they're going to remember both, and then they're going to say, oh, well, they said that Rebecca was a great fighter, but she gets damseled in every single situation. It has to be saved by the hero every time she fights. The writer has no idea what a good fighter actually is. Telling does have its place for certain scenarios, but most of the time, about 90% of the time, you need to show your audience what's going on. It's the whole reason they picked up your book in the first place. And this is especially true for sharing the details of your world building or characterization. A lot of writers make a mistake of condensing a truly fascinating aspect of this world that they've created into just a couple of little sentences rather than creating what could be a really cool, vivid, intense scene out of it. It's basically all about mastering the art of exposition. That is, conveying certain pieces of information to your audience. And it is one of the most important and difficult skills that a writer has to master. I am going to link a video by a creator that I really like, Hello Future Me, in the description of this video. He does a great job of explaining what exposition is and giving some really cool ideas on how you can do it, all the different methods there are of it. Go check it out. Those are the 5 biggest mistakes that I've noticed newbie authors make. Please share your experience in the comments below. If you want me to critique your manuscript or even just the first few chapters, my website is linked in the description. High-ranked patrons on my Patreon page, by the way, get some pretty steep discounts. The Patreon link is also in the description. And finally, the book giveaway. I should grab the second book too. So Justina Ireland's Dread Nation and Deathless Divide have been 2 of my favorite books for like years. It's really well written. If you like alternative history or historical fiction or even just watching queer black girls being cool, you want this book. It is an amazing, intense, brutal read, but don't worry, there is a happy, or at least hopeful, ending in both of these. This is an international giveaway going through June 30th. On July 1st, I am going to randomly select an email or a name that gets sent to me, and I'm going to send them an email saying, hey, you won, give me your mailing address so I can ship these off to you. The sign-up link is in the description of this video, so click on that for a chance to win. Bye, lovelies!